I inherited a $13 million luxury fortune. But one accident revealed the cruelest betrayal by the man I thought loved me. Stay with me as I walk you through my story. If it reaches your heart, don't forget to show some love. Your support truly means everything. My name is Danielle Porter. I was 28 when my life changed overnight. My grandmother, a quiet but determined woman who spent decades investing in property and stocks, passed away and left me everything. $13 million. Even now, saying that number out loud feels unreal. I had never thought of myself as wealthy. I came from a hardworking family, and my grandmother always lived modestly, hiding just how much she had built in the shadows of her life. When the lawyers read her will, I nearly collapsed. That kind of money felt like both a blessing and a burden. But at first, it only felt like joy. I had Marcus, my husband. We met in college, and from the very beginning, he made me feel like the most important person in the world. He was charming, funny, the kind of man who could make a whole room light up when he walked in. I loved him fiercely, and when he told me we'd never have to worry again, I believed him. We bought a penthouse in Atlanta, drove cars I'd only ever seen in magazines, and traveled like royalty. For the first time, I thought my life had reached perfection. There were nights I'd lie awake in silk sheets, staring at the ceiling and whispering a thank you to my grandmother. I felt like she had given me not just wealth, but the chance to build a future full of love and security. Marcus would roll over, kiss my forehead, and tell me I was his everything. I would smile and believe every word, because why wouldn't I? I had no reason to doubt him, no reason to think that darkness could live in a heart that looked so full of love. Looking back, I can see how naive I was. How much I wanted to believe in the fairy tale. The late-night calls he said were business. The way he brushed off my questions about finances, the little moments where he pulled away when I wanted closeness. I ignored them all. I told myself he was stressed, that he was protecting me, that it was normal for couples to go through phases. I was wrong. Back then, though, I couldn't see it. All I saw was a man who had promised me forever, and a fortune that I thought would secure that promise. I thought I was living the dream. I didn't realize I was standing on a trapdoor, one that would open beneath me the night of that accident. And when it did, the truth nearly destroyed me. But it also set me free. I met Marcus when I was still in college, back when life felt wide open and full of possibilities. He was sitting in the student lounge, cracking jokes with a group of friends, and I remember how easily he drew everyone in. His confidence was magnetic, and when he looked at me, it felt like I was the only person in the room. I wasn't used to that kind of attention, not from someone who seemed so sure of himself. From our very first conversation, I felt a spark, the kind that makes you believe in fate. We started dating quickly, and before long, Marcus was woven into every part of my life. He was charming, funny, the type of man who always had the right words. He made me laugh when I was stressed, encouraged me when I doubted myself, and promised me a future filled with love and adventure. I thought I had found the man of my dreams, someone who would protect me and stand by me no matter what. After graduation, I landed a stable job that I actually enjoyed. I loved the routine, the security, the pride of earning my own paycheck. But Marcus would tease me, saying I didn't need to stress myself with work when he could provide for both of us. Why waste your time when we could be building a bigger life together? He'd say, holding my hand as if his love alone could take care of everything. When the inheritance came, his words grew stronger. You don't need to work anymore, baby. We'll never worry about money again. At first, it sounded like a dream. Slowly, I let go of my job, convincing myself he was right. Our lifestyle shifted almost overnight. We bought a beautiful penthouse in Atlanta, with floor-to-ceiling windows that showed the city glittering beneath us. We drove sleek new cars, traveled to places I had only seen in magazines, and dressed in clothes that turned heads when we walked into a room. Marcus loved the attention, and I loved seeing him happy. For a while, it really did feel like we were untouchable, like nothing could shake us. But beneath the surface, little cracks were forming. Marcus always insisted on handling the finances, brushing off my questions with a smile. Don't worry about it, I've got everything under control, he would say, as if my curiosity was unnecessary. Whenever I suggested we go over accounts together, he'd laugh and call me cute, dismissing my concerns as if they were silly. It was subtle, but the way he shut me out left me uneasy. Then there was his phone. He carried it everywhere, never letting it out of his sight. If it buzzed, he'd step into another room or tilt the screen away from me. I told myself he was just private, that maybe he had work-related conversations he didn't want me stressing about. Still, there were moments where my stomach twisted, and I pushed the feeling down, telling myself he was just being protective. I wanted so badly to believe in the perfect marriage we had built. I clung to the laughter, the trips, the kisses at night, and ignored the shadows creeping around the edges. It was one of those nights where the rain wouldn't stop. Wasn't love tapping against the windows like it was trying to break its way in? At least that's what I told myself. Marcus had rushed out of the penthouse, saying he had to meet a client, his tone sharp like I shouldn't ask questions. He left in a hurry, but for the first time ever, he forgot something, his phone. It was sitting there on the kitchen counter, glowing in the dim light. I barely noticed it at first because I was tired, my body heavy from a long day of doing nothing but trying to fill the silence in our home. I decided to grab a glass of water before heading to bed. The kitchen floor was slick, maybe from the rain tracked in earlier or a spill I hadn't cleaned properly. My foot slid out from under me, and I crashed hard onto the tile. Pain shot through my wrist as I tried to catch myself, and I couldn't move it without feeling like fire was spreading up my arm. I sat on the floor, cradling it, tears springing to my eyes, not just from the pain, but from the shock of how quickly everything can go wrong. That's when I heard it. The buzz. Then another. Then another. Marcus's phone lit up like it was alive, vibrating across the counter where he had left it. My first instinct wasn't suspicion. It was concern. Maybe it was work. Maybe something important. But the screen kept flashing the same name. Jasmine. My chest tightened. I didn't know a Jasmine. My hands shook as I reached for the phone with my good hand, guilt rushing through me as if I was the one doing something wrong. The messages were impossible to ignore. Miss you already. Can't wait to feel you tonight. And then, the one that made my whole body go cold. She really has no idea you've been mine for 2 years. Thank you for spoiling me with her money. Her money. My money. I scrolled further, my stomach twisting with every word. Jasmine joked about me like I was a clueless fool, laughing with Marcus about how easy it was to keep me in the dark. She knew about the inheritance, down to the exact amount, and she mocked me for trusting him so blindly. $13 million, and she thinks she's the lucky one message said, followed by a string of laughing emojis. I couldn't breathe. The room spun around me. The pain in my wrist was nothing compared to the ache that ripped through my chest. Every kiss, every promise, every whispered, "I love you," felt like a cruel performance now. I thought I had built a life with a man who cherished me. Instead, I had been financing his betrayal, feeding the love he gave to someone else. That rainy night didn't just leave me with a broken wrist. It shattered the illusions I had built my life on. And as I sat there, tears blurring the cruel words on his screen, I knew my world would never be the same again. I sat alone in the living room that night, my wrist wrapped in ice, the phone still glowing with the proof of everything I never wanted to believe. The rain outside had slowed to a drizzle, but inside me, the storm was only beginning. Every memory of Marcus played back in my head like broken film reels, each one warped by the truth I had just uncovered. Suddenly, things that once seemed harmless made perfect, devastating sense. The late nights he brushed off as work. The vague excuses about clients who always seemed to need him after midnight. The way his touch had grown colder, the kisses shorter, the distance between us greater with every passing month. I used to tell myself it was stress, that men sometimes pulled away and came back when they were ready. But now I knew. He wasn't pulling away, he was giving himself to someone else. What cut deeper than anything was the way he had slowly pushed me away from everyone who cared about me. My mother used to call often, and Marcus would roll his eyes, saying I didn't need anyone else but him. When I wanted to meet up with old friends, he'd tell me they were jealous of me, that they only wanted a piece of the fortune. He painted the world as full of vultures, convincing me to build a nest that only fit the two of us. I believed him. I thought he was protecting me, when in truth, he was isolating me, making sure I had no one else to turn to. The betrayal wasn't just in his body or his lies. It was in the way he made me doubt myself. The way he smiled at me like I was fragile, like I should be grateful for his love. And I had been. God, I had been. For hours I cried. My chest hurt with every sob, and I pressed my face into a pillow to muffle the sound, as if even now, I was scared he would hear and twist my pain into something small. Grief swallowed me, wave after wave, until there were no more tears left. And then something shifted. The grief hardened into something sharper. The ache in my chest cooled until it felt like ice. I stopped shaking. My breathing slowed. And in that silence, clarity settled over me. I couldn't scream at him. Not yet. I couldn't throw the phone in his face and demand answers, Because what good would that do? He'd lie, twist the truth, make me feel crazy the way he always had when I asked too many questions. No. If Marcus thought I was weak, if he thought I was blind, then I would let him keep believing it. I would play along. Smile when he came home, cook his favorite meals, kiss him goodnight. All the while, I'd be planning. I would gather proof. I would be patient. And when the time came, I wouldn't just leave him. I would destroy him the way he tried to destroy me. The night after I found the messages, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed beside Marcus, listening to his steady breathing, wondering how many lies he had whispered with that same calm rhythm. I stared at the ceiling, my wrist throbbing, my chest heavy with the truth I could no longer deny. I knew I couldn't do this alone. I needed someone who could see what I couldn't, someone trained to peel back the layers Marcus had so carefully built. That's when I found Calvin Briggs. Calvin came highly recommended by a quiet source, an old contact of my grandmother's lawyer. He was in his 40s, sharp-eyed and deliberate, the kind of man who seemed to notice everything but spoke only what mattered. When we first met in a small cafe across town, I felt exposed, like every lie in my marriage was written on my face. He didn't push me. He just nodded, listened to my halting explanation, and said, "If you want the truth, you have to be ready for it. It may not look like what you think." I nodded back. I was ready. Within days, Calvin began feeding me pieces of a puzzle I wished I didn't have to see. Bank statements, transfers, shell accounts. He explained how Marcus had been siphoning money out of my accounts, not in reckless handfuls, but in careful streams that wouldn't trip alarms. Each trail led to one destination, Jasmine. Under Marcus's name, she suddenly had a new business. A boutique that looked legitimate on paper, but was funded entirely by my inheritance. My grandmother's hard-earned millions were being poured into another woman's dream, as if I were nothing more than a sponsor who didn't even know she was paying. Then came the photos. Calvin slid them across the table during our second meeting. Marcus and Jasmine, laughing on a beach in the Bahamas. Marcus and Jasmine, sipping wine on a rooftop in Miami. Marcus and Jasmine, holding hands outside a luxury store in Paris. My chest tightened with each picture. These weren't quick flings or hidden rendezvous. These were vacations, trips bought with my grandmother's legacy, moments stolen from me to build memories with her. When I couldn't look at another image, Calvin leaned forward. His voice was low, steady, and cutting. "He's not just cheating. He's setting you up. He's moving assets, putting his name where yours should be, and making sure you're the one left empty when he's finished. Be careful. Men like him don't just walk away. They leave you with nothing." The words chilled me deeper than the pictures. It wasn't enough for Marcus to betray me. He was planning to discard me, to drain me until there was nothing left but my name on empty accounts. As I walked away from that meeting, the city lights blurred through my tears, but inside me, something had hardened. Marcus thought he was writing the end of my story, that I'd fade quietly once he had taken it all. But he was wrong. I wasn't going to let him bury me. I was going to make sure he drowned in the lies he built. I learned to wear a smile like armor. Every morning I woke up, I smoothed my hair, slipped into something nice, and met Marcus with warmth that felt practiced. I cooked his favorite breakfasts, laughed at his jokes, and told him he looked sharp before he left. When he paused to kiss me, I kissed back, even when my heart was full of cold questions. The mask was heavy at first, but it worked. He believed I was the same woman who'd trusted him with everything. Marcus grew bolder under that false calm. The more I nodded and praised him, the more careless he became. He started talking in ways he never had before, bragging at brunch about a game-changing deal, dropping names of partners and investors he claimed were lining up. He'd flash a confident grin and say, "We're moving in," as if the life built on my grandmother's savings had somehow been earned by him. I listened, let him talk, and watched the way he spent without thought, as if our funds were an endless river for him to drink from. He forgot to hide the truth in his arrogance. He would boast about opening accounts, about funding ventures, that never actually produced anything but paperwork. He'd speak of Jasmine in a tone that made my skin crawl, half lover, half investor, assuming I had no idea. The more he revealed, the clearer the pattern became. He wasn't building a life with me. He was siphoning it dry while pretending to love me. While Marcus played at success, I began to take real control. Quietly, without drama, I moved portions of the inheritance into places only I could access. Not all at once. Careful steps that would not ring alarms. New accounts, trusts in my name, small transfers that would grow into a fortress. I learned the language of passwords and forms, the patience of waiting days for confirmations, the little thrill when a transfer cleared, and I knew he had no clue. It felt like reclaiming pieces of myself that had been handed away. Then I reached out to someone I had shut out when Marcus suggested distance. Alicia Green, my cousin. We hadn't spoken in years, the kind of family drift that happens slowly until you notice the space between you is a canyon. I sent a short message, no explanation, just a reach. Her reply was immediate, blunt, and perfect. Tell me everything. Alicia arrived with the kind of energy that filled a room. She was bold in a way I had been taught not to be. Where I wore masks, she wore armor. We became a quiet, fierce team. Over coffee and late-night calls, Alicia listened, asked sharp questions, and offered blunt advice. She helped me think through evidence, legal steps, and how to protect myself if Marcus tried to fight back. We mapped out timelines, noted odd transactions, and rehearsed how to keep me believable while I gathered proof. She would be my witness, my voice when I couldn't use my own, and I would be the one who kept smiling in front of Marcus until the moment our plan fell into place. We didn't just want to expose him. We wanted him to feel the ruin he'd tried to hand me, publicly and personally. Alicia's eyes burned when she said it. We'll take everything he thinks he owns. I nodded. The mask stayed on, but beneath it, something fiercer had woken in me. I told Marcus I wanted to buy a beachfront property. I framed it like a dream, something we could own together, a place for future vacations and investors to admire. He lit up the way he always did when money smelled like opportunity. Finally, he said, voice hungry. Something real. I let him feel that hunger. It would make him careless. I called my lawyer the next morning and asked for a meeting. I used calm, measured words, the kind you learn to use when everything inside you wants to scream. I want to buy a property in my name, but I want Marcus to sign on as a co-investor, I told her. She raised an eyebrow and asked why. I shrugged and gave her the story I'd rehearsed. Joint ownership made sense for taxes, for appearances, for both of us to be equal partners. She smiled a professional smile and said she'd draft the papers. I didn't tell her the real reason. So Marcus would sign what he thought was temporary while the deed and control lived where I wanted them. The meeting was arranged at a boutique law firm downtown. I sat across from the lawyer, watching her type clauses into the contract that looked like equality on paper, but spelled control in hidden lines. My lawyer was thorough. She set up escrow accounts and layered trustees so that the property would be registered under a trust one controlled. Marcus would see his name on the dotted line, his signature making him believe he had claim. He wouldn't know the keys to the castle were always in my hand. When I brought the plan to Marcus, he smiled the smile that used to melt me. He read the brief summary, the part about joint investment, and his eyes went soft with greed. I can't believe you're finally thinking like me, he said. We'll flip it, build equity, sell. He rattled off schemes the way a man who thought money came from someone else's pocket rattles off fantasies. I nodded and kissed him, and he left feeling like the cleverest man in the room. That arrogance would be his undoing. We set a dinner to sign the documents. Quiet, private, the kind of ritual that felt official but also intimate. Candlelight, wine, my hands steady as I poured. When the moment came, I slid the pen to him and watched him sign with a flourish. He didn't read the fine print. He never did. He'd seen his name. That was enough. After dinner, while clearing plates, I asked him casually, like it was a thought that had wandered into my head. By the way, how often do you see Jasmine these days? He froze, a fork clattering against a plate. I watched his face go white, then smooth into a practiced denial. Who? He asked too quickly. I don't know what you're talking about. He lied in the way people lie when they've been caught by their own arrogance. Too fast, too sure. I smiled and said nothing more. I let the question hang between us like a cold draft. Marcus tried to laugh it off, made a joke about old clients and mistaken names, but his eyes kept darting to his phone, to the doorway, like a cornered animal. That night I didn't reveal my hand. I didn't need to. Watching him squirm, listening to the small, sharp sounds of worry in his voice, felt better than any confession. He would stew. He would start cleaning up, covering tracks. And every step he took to hide would only leave more footprints for me to follow. I had signed the papers and planted the seed of doubt. Now I watched, patient, as his empire began to tremble. The night of the gala shimmered with chandeliers and whispered money. I arrived draped in a sapphire gown, the kind that commanded attention without begging for it. The charity banner with my name stretched across the ballroom, and guests murmured about the woman who had turned grief into fortune and fortune into philanthropy. That was the image I wanted. Untouchable, polished, controlled. What no one knew was that beneath the silk and diamonds, I was holding a blade sharpened by betrayal. Marcus stood at my side, smiling like a man who believed the night was his to own. He shook hands, clinked glasses, leaned close to whisper about potential investors and networking. He didn't notice the way my eyes scanned the crowd, waiting for the storm I had invited. Jasmine entered quietly, hair perfectly styled, dress sharp enough to cut. She thought she was blending in, but I had made sure her seat was front and center. She didn't yet realize she was about to become a piece on my board. Dinner flowed, speeches followed, and then Calvin, my silent weapon, took the stage. On behalf of our sponsor, Ms. Danielle Porter, he said smoothly, we'd like to share a small story about integrity. His voice echoed as screens around the ballroom lit up. First came the photos, grainy at first, then crystal clear. Marcus and Jasmine at hotels, their hands tangled where they thought no one was watching, their smiles too private to be mistaken for business. The room hushed. Forks stilled, glasses froze midair. Then came the financial records. Wire transfers from my joint account to a shell company in Marcus's name, withdrawals routed through Jasmine's signature. Every secret they had whispered in shadows now glared under the chandeliers. Marcus shot to his feet, face burning, hands raised like he could wave it away. This is fabricated, he stammered, voice cracking. Anyone can Photoshop pictures. Anyone can fake numbers. But the evidence rolled on, document after document, timestamp after timestamp. His denials sounded smaller with each slide, swallowed by the gasps and murmurs of the audience. Jasmine's face twisted, not with shame, but with fury. She turned on Marcus, her voice sharp enough to silence the room. You said no one would ever find out, she hissed. Then, in front of governors, CEOs, and society women with pearls clenched around their throats, she slapped him. The sound cracked like a gunshot. Gasps rippled across the ballroom as Jasmine stormed out, heels striking the marble like war drums. Marcus stood frozen, his mask shattered. I rose slowly, every movement deliberate, my voice steady as I faced the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, for too long, I trusted a man who believed deceit could outlive truth. Tonight, I reclaim my name. My assets, my fortune, and my legacy are secured under my control. And as of this moment, my marriage is not. Applause didn't follow, but something heavier did, respect. Eyes turned to me not with pity, but with recognition. I had staged my husband's unraveling in the very world he worshipped. And as Marcus sagged in his chair, ruined in front of the only people he ever wanted to impress, I smiled with the calm of a woman who had finally taken back everything. Marcus had always walked with the swagger of a man who believed the world bent in his favor. But in the weeks after the gala, that swagger vanished. His phone, once buzzing with investors and friends, now stayed silent. Calls went unanswered, emails ignored. Men who had once toasted him with champagne refused to shake his hand. Word traveled fast in Atlanta's elite circles, and Marcus Porter's name was now synonymous with deceit. The penthouse that he once paraded through like a king was no longer his. Danielle's lawyer ensured that every asset tied to her inheritance was locked firmly under her control. His bank cards were declined, his accounts frozen. The tailored suits he once flaunted suddenly seemed ridiculous on a man with nowhere to go. He pawned his watches, then his cufflinks, until even those small pieces of his vanity slipped away. Marcus tried to salvage his reputation, pitching new ventures to old associates. But doors closed before he even knocked. "We can't be associated with you," one man said flatly before hanging up. Jasmine, the woman he thought would stay at his side, disappeared the moment the money dried up. Rumor had it she'd found another benefactor, one with deeper pockets and fewer scandals. Marcus was alone, stripped bare. One rainy night, desperation drove him to Danielle's doorstep. He looked nothing like the polished husband she once knew. His hair was unkempt, his eyes bloodshot, his suit wrinkled from days of wear. When Danielle opened the door, he fell to his knees on the welcome mat, rainwater soaking through his clothes. "Danielle," he choked out, his voice hoarse. "Please. I made mistakes, but you can't leave me like this. I need you. I love you." His tears streaked down his cheeks. But Danielle only saw the same man who had once mocked her trust, siphoned her fortune, and laughed with another woman about her naivety. For a moment, she let the silence hang between them, her eyes steady on his broken figure. Memories of his betrayal flickered through her mind, his late nights, the cruel smirk when he dismissed her concerns, the texts that cut her open. And then she remembered Calvin's words. He's setting you up. Marcus had never loved her, not truly. Her voice was calm, edged with steel. You taught me exactly what love doesn't look like, she said. And for that, I'll always remember you. But forgiveness? You don't deserve it. His sobs grew louder as she slowly closed the door. The lock clicked, final and unyielding. On the other side, Marcus collapsed against the frame, his fists weakly pounding once before falling limp. Inside, Danielle exhaled, steady and sure. For the first time in years, she felt free. Marcus Porter was nothing more than a ghost now, one she would no longer allow to haunt her. And outside, in the pouring rain, the man who once believed he held all the power sat broken, stripped of everything by the woman he underestimated most. The months after Marcus's downfall felt like waking from a long, dark dream. Danielle took each day slowly, but with purpose. The weight that once crushed her had lifted, replaced by a new determination. She was no longer the woman who allowed someone else to define her worth. She was Danielle Porter, granddaughter of Evelyn Porter, and she carried that legacy with pride. With Alicia by her side, Danielle poured herself into rebuilding not just her finances, but her sense of self. They sat together in late-night strategy sessions, going through investments with a sharp eye. Danielle diversified her portfolio, ensuring no one could ever manipulate her wealth again. Every choice she made was her own, and with each signature on a contract or new business venture, she felt a piece of her strength returning. But money wasn't everything. Her grandmother had believed in giving back, in lifting others up when the world tried to keep them down. Inspired by that legacy, Danielle founded the Evelyn Porter Foundation, an organization dedicated to empowering women, especially those who had been silenced, controlled, or betrayed by the people closest to them. At the opening ceremony, she stood before a crowd of women who carried their own scars, her voice steady and sure. You are not broken, she told them. You are not weak. You are survivors, and your story doesn't end with someone else's betrayal. It begins with your strength. The foundation quickly grew, attracting support from women across the country. Danielle mentored young entrepreneurs, funded shelters, and provided legal aid for those trapped in toxic marriages. Each success story felt like a small stitch in the fabric of healing, not just for the women she helped but for herself. Through it all, Alicia remained her rock. Where Marcus once demanded control, Alicia offered encouragement. Where Marcus silenced her voice, Alicia reminded her it was powerful. Together, they laughed, they cried, and they built something lasting. Danielle had lost a husband, yes, but she had gained a sisterhood stronger than anything Marcus could have imagined. One quiet evening, Danielle drove out to her grandmother's old estate. The house had been renovated, its walls no longer carrying the shadows of the past, but glowing with new light. She wandered through the rooms, running her fingers along the polished wood, feeling both the history and the future within its walls. Finally, she stepped out onto the balcony, the horizon stretching wide before her. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. For the first time in years, she didn't feel trapped or betrayed. She felt free. Danielle closed her eyes, inhaling deeply, and whispered into the wind, I am enough. I always was. As the last rays of sunlight touched her face, she stood tall, not as a victim, not as a wife discarded, but as a woman reborn. Her story was no longer about betrayal. It was about power, resilience, and the unshakable strength of rising stronger. Do you believe Danielle made the right choice by shutting the door on Marcus for good? Or should she have given him another chance after everything? Share your thoughts down in the comments. I'd really love to hear your perspective. And if stories like this inspire you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next one.